This is Dr. Ruben Chen, and welcome to the Vital Signs Podcast. Hi, this is Dr. Ruben Chen. I am the Chief Medical Advisor at Sunrider International. So welcome to another Vital Signs Podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. Before we get started, I do want to do a big shout out to Sunrider International. They are celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. So we've been around 40 years, making all kinds of amazing products, all herbal, plant-based products, everything from our vegan protein powder to herbal toothpaste. We have all kinds of products. So if you're interested in learning more about our Sunrider products, you can check us out on sunrider.com. Okay, so we have a guest. Her name is Ali Essig, and she has a very interesting experience. And actually, it is an interesting experience, but I feel like a lot of people can relate to some of the experiences that she is going to talk about with us. So, Ali, can you share with us a little bit about yourself?
You bet. You bet. So I live in Washington, D.C. With my 6 children. They're all between the ages of 3 and 11. And so we've been in DC
Wow.
for 15 years. Yeah, I know. It's a busy household. It's fun.
Hmm.
But we lived in DC for 15 years. I used to work on Capitol Hill. And I did political campaigns and worked for congressmen for years. And then after number 3 is when I kind of just was busy enough with them that I stayed home for a while. And then my husband is an attorney. He works as a patent attorney and his office is right by the White House. So we're just enjoying being in DC, and that's this has become our hometown.
Hmm. Well, we have 5 kids, so I can sort of
Uh,
understand. And we used to live in LA, and people would always say, like, why do you have so many so many kids in this city? And it was the same. My wife was working all the way up until number 3, and then we were like, well, okay, now that they outnumber us, she's going to spend some more time at home.
right, right. It gets expensive after a while.
Yeah, it's complicated. So, so what you have a very interesting journey in relation to just health in general. So, what is that journey that you went on?
Right, right. So soon after, number 5 and 6 were our twin boys. So that was in 2019 they were born, and they were about 7 months old when I found myself taking a shower. My twins were just downstairs with my other kids, and my neighbor came knocking on my shower door. She was able to get into my house, came knocking on my shower door, and said, "Hey, your husband was trying to get a hold of you, but couldn't get a hold of you." And obviously, because I was in the shower, and
Wow.
he's on his way to the ER right now, and you need to call him. He told me to come and check on you and to let you know. Ended up being a blessing that she was there, because then I could leave my kids with her, and I immediately went and raced to the ER. And my husband's just 37 years old at the time. So a lot of things were going through my mind. Like, was he hit by a car? Like, what in the world happened? I have absolutely no idea. And I opened the door and to the ER and look over, and I see my husband slumped over in a wheelchair, and he looked like he had aged 50 years. And I
Wow.
knew immediately in the moment that he was having a stroke. Like, I could just feel it. I could just see it. I could feel it. But of course you don't really know. And so we had to sit and wait to do a bunch of tests, like hours in the ER while you're waiting to do all these tests. But his eye was slumped down. He wasn't really quite himself. He was a little bit more emotional than usual. And anyway, he was just really grateful that I was able to be there. And after a lot of tests, it was conclusive that he had suffered a stroke, and it had affected his vision. And so
Mm.
at that time, he had double vision, and we just thought that maybe he would just wake up one day and it would be gone. But it doesn't. Your vision doesn't necessarily work like that. It takes time to heal, and so it was months and months and months that he ended up having the after effects of the stroke and having that double vision. But while we were in the hospital, they ran a bunch of tests to find out, okay, why did a 37-year-old, seemingly healthy, he wasn't like, but super overweight or anything like that. And they were trying to figure out why someone so young would have a stroke. And all the tests came back negative. There was no hole in his heart. There was no heart arrhythmia. There was no, genetic family history, like nothing. And so,
Wow. So it was an
yeah.
ischemic stroke, right?
Right. Well,
Ischemic,
they
so
said
he
it
had a
was,
blood clot.
yeah. 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 And that because of all the right, with the blood clot, and because of all the side effects, it was something that we had to treat seriously. Right. And the only direction that they gave us was a piece of paper that said, from now on, you have to follow a heart healthy diet. And the paper said, okay, you have to do, really watch your trans fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, and increase your fiber and stop drinking alcohol. And to me, I was like, okay, the alcohol, I get that. But everything else was like, what does this mean? Like, yeah, I don't know
So
what to
they
make
just
for
gave
dinner.
you a paper and just said, "Hey, I hope that you get this."
Right, right, right. They're like, you
Uh,
can meet with a dietitian if you want. And then next thing is like, well, how much is that going to cost? So, it just was kind of, we just didn't know. And so I during this whole experience, there was a lot of flashbacks that came back to what happened with my father in the past. So my dad, back in 2012, he was just 55 years old and suffered his one and only heart attack and ended up passing away. And so
oh.
I remember, yeah, back in 2012, wishing so badly that he had gotten a warning, that he had been told to follow a heart healthy diet, that he could have had a chance to change,
Hmm.
but he didn't even get that chance. And
Mm.
so the mama bear in me just like came out and was like, no, we got this warning that I had prayed so badly for with my dad. So let's do everything in our power to change our diets and hopefully to help his vision come back. Like that was also a huge part of it. Like, what can we do in our power to help his vision? Because he couldn't drive, couldn't work. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a lot of things when you have 6 kids that you have to figure
Yeah.
out. So
So so vision was the only thing that was affected on him.
yes, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the only thing that we could tell. Thank goodness, right?
yeah,
And now that
yeah.
I've spoken with a lot of other people this has happened to, I feel like we were so lucky that it was just its vision. It could have
Hmm.
been so
I
much
mean,
worse.
vision is a big thing, but a
Right.
stroke can affect a lot of things too. So yeah.
Right.
S-
Right. So
So
so I what were you gonna say?
so how is he doing right now?
So right now, so it took about 5 months, and now his vision is fine. It kind of slowly healed. He liked to talk about it was like filling a bucket up with water. You know how it just like he would have double vision, just like half. If he looked up, it was double vision, but if he looked down, it was clear. Like it was fascinating, kind of how his vision came back. But he didn't just wake up one day. It just kind of slowly over time got better and better and better. But
Oh
yeah,
my
he
goodness.
luckily can see now. But in the
Oh.
meantime, when I got that piece of paper, I decided to just dive into the research because I didn't understand, well, what is trans fats? What are saturated fats? What are cholesterol? And
This
what
is
is
the
that
thing
in?
that people don't talk about. And it actually is in everything that we consume as an American. It's crazy. Yeah.
Right. 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 And we have no idea. It's like we went to make a peanut butter sandwich as soon as we get home from the hospital. And I remember my husband looking at it being like, there's saturated fat in here. Should I eat this? Should I not eat this? Like so confused.
Yeah.
It's rough. But I found a general pattern. Like the more research I did, I found a general pattern that trans fats, since the trans fat ban, it's not as prevalent, but it's still in a lot of processed foods and fried foods, and naturally found in animal products.
Hmm.
Saturated fat, this is probably the hardest thing for my husband to learn, but the number one source of saturated fat is cheese. And as a cheese lover,
Oh
my
no.
husband's a big cheese lover. I know, right? Was like,
Ice cream
he's like,
too probably is up there.
right, right. Beef is number two. And then after that is all the other dairy products. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I know. As a cheese lover, my husband's like, I could give up meat. No big deal, but I could never give up cheese. And then he
oh,
was like, I guess I have
that's
to
funny.
give up cheese. Like, it's okay. And it's amazing how your taste buds change over time, that he
Hmm.
was able to, like, you discover so many more new tastes and flavors. The third thing was cholesterol. And while it doesn't have as significant of an impact, some people are hyper responders. And so it is still best to avoid cholesterol containing foods and again, that's only found in animal products. And then eating more fiber, at first I thought, okay, that's just the fiber one bars. Like, what is, like, how do I get more fiber? But overall, I learned just such a simple truth that plants are the only things that contain fiber. There's no fiber in animal products, but all plants contain fiber. So in order to increase your fiber, you just eat more plants. And that's not just fruits or vegetables. It's also whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes. Those are all considered plants. And so to increase our plant consumption, decrease our animal consumption. And, it's funny because one of my friends recommended the book, How Not to Die. And I'll never forget, she's like, it kind of preaches a vegan diet. And I was like, ew, no, in the moment thinking like, oh, so turned off by that. But now I love that book. And it showed me the
Hmm.
why. I opened the book on strokes and it was like, okay, this is why you need to lower your animal intake. This is why, you need to be eating more plants. This is what's happening in those little veins and arteries. As you're eating more plants, all the antioxidants will help those oxidized fats, which will help keep everything clear and help reduce the risk of this happening again. And so while I'm not 100% vegan in any way, we do eat meat sparingly and we do eat a lot more plants than we ever did. But over time, the miracle was seeing what happened with my husband is that, with 6 kids, we both kind of gained the baby weight. But I don't know if you had this experience, but
Yeah. It's
you're
tough.
both
And I mean, my wife is also a good cook that makes it more difficult. So,
right, right.
yeah.
It's the simple baby weight, right? We all kind of like ebb and flow.
Hmm.
So every time we'd have a kid, like he'd gain weight with me and then we'd lose it. And he still we both were kind of working on the twin baby weight, but
Twins are
again,
tough.
not right. Twins, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And at the time we were following the typical high protein diet, like following a macro diet. And that's what we were doing. He'd lost some weight, but that's what we were eating when he had his stroke. And
Hmm.
so then we shifted towards a plant-based diet. And it was amazing that he didn't even have to track anything, didn't have to track his macros, didn't have to pay attention to what he was eating, as long as it was a lot of plants. And he lost even more weight and kept it off long term, which was like amazing for him.
So,
So
when you say animal products, like what specifically? Was it processed foods? Was it, I mean, what kind of things were cut out of your diet? Was it just sugar? I know that people do like a low carb type of thing, but what kind of things did you guys do to really change your diet?
I think more than anything is we came from an abundance mindset, in the sense of, it was like, what can we add? So we just started adding more plants, taking
Mm.
out the cheese. I stopped buying the fishies, like all the processed kid food for sure. Like, stop buying that.
Uh, how did you
Right.
replace that for the kids? That's a tough one because my kids, that the funniest thing is my kids, we made them, my wife made them some like these homemade noodles and stuff, and my kids, all they wanted was like the Kraft macaroni and cheese, and they were just like, oh, this stuff looks weird, it's like a weird color and stuff, we want the stuff that sort of looks orange. I'm like, that's a weird color too. Oh, okay.
Yep.
So what kind of things did you replace it with?
Right, right. So at the time, my kids loved chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. So that
Oh.
was the easy meal. You know how it goes. The easy meal,
Hmm.
just to make. Everyone loves it. I even put the chicken nuggets in the microwave. Super easy, right? I know. But I just stopped buying it, and it
Hmm.
just wasn't in the home. And that doesn't mean when they see mac and cheese at the store, like, hey, can we have some? They'll still ask. And I'm like, yeah, if you want, they play soccer. And so whenever they get a goal, they can pick out whatever they want, whether it's ice
Sure.
cream or mac and cheese or whatever, like we still have that. But it's more of a treat and not an expectation of like
Not
a
like a
normal.
staple.
Right, not a staple. Totally.
Right.
Not something that we rely on, but you know, and again, their taste buds started to change, like, slowly over time. You know, I just started with recipes I already knew and loved, and easily just swapped out the meat for beans most of the time. So,
Mm,
a lot of the
okay.
things, like, I made a cashew chicken, for example, and I would just use chickpeas instead of chicken, with everything else being the same.
Hmm.
So that was you know, kind of the simple things of just adding more beans for a protein source, which took some, like, again, your gut kind of has to adjust with all of the increase of fiber. My husband
Hmm.
used to say, if you eat like a cow, you smell like a cow, because there was a lot of adjustment for him. But I always tell my clients when I work with them, go slowly. Don't, like, go all in. Don't pendulum swing like we did. Like, go really slow so your gut can adjust, and then you won't have the dysbiosis problems. But
Now,
it's a learn.
one of the things that we talk about a lot, at least in our Sunrider products, is what I talk about in our products. We have a lot of variety. Variety is like a big thing. Did you notice that you had to add more variety in your plant-based products? Was this a thing, or did you really just, just stick with, yeah, that this is the issue with the macro diet is people just think like, well, I just eat that tuna fish and salad and that's it. I mean, so how did you guys enhance your food? Because this is an education process.
Right, right. In fact, I feel like that was a side effect without not even planned, because when we were eating like the macro-based diet, it was like chicken, chicken, chicken all the time, like, we had chicken for
Yeah.
dinner at least 3 or 4 times a week. And so it just naturally created more plant diversity. And I
Mm,
love, like you mentioned, the American Gut Project is the largest study ever done on the human microbiome. And they found that those who consume a variety of 30 different plants every week have the healthiest microbiomes. And whether or not they eat meat or dairy or anything else, is that they need to, that plant diversity from those whole foods, that can really strengthen your gut more than anything. So that made it easy, because I was constantly looking for different foods to add, and knew, we were eating a lot of salads at first, and then we shifted to make more like energy bites from dates, and all these other things to have on hand just in case. And I love buying like Lara bars for my kids, so they still had a little bit of, like, not even, just like a packaged food that I knew I was comfortable with for them to have,
mhm.
and for us to eat when we needed something in a pinch. But in general, we were eating so many more tastes and flavors and variety than I ever imagined. I think that's like, when you think of whole food plant-based, all you think of is what you're going to miss out on. But
Right.
you're like, no, but I love meat and I love cheese. And while we still eat those occasionally, it's amazing. It was like someone opened this door to this like beautiful rainforest of food that I had no
Yeah.
idea, and all these flavors and all these tastes that I was like mind blown. It makes just simple pizza look so boring compared to the foods that I was eating now.
Yeah, I was actually, people ask me sometimes in other countries if they have the same kind of diet recommendations. And in Japan, they're recommended in every meal to have food that has, I think, 7 different colors, because
Mm,
a lot of the nutrients in especially different plants come from different colors. Sometimes people, when they say, "Oh, I eat my vegetable," they're like, "Well, I cut up some peppers and put it on top, and that's good," But I mean,
mhm.
it comes from more than that, and there's a lot more antioxidants. You mentioned also his gut biome sounds like it got better, which, a lot of these complex carbs, they're also prebiotics as well. So that's probably one of the benefits from that. So overall, it's just general health and stronger immune system. So,
Oh yeah.
what are some of the things you feel? And it sounds like you're sharing this with people as well? So is this now something that you do for a living, is helping people shift their diet?
Yeah, yeah. So after like us shifting our diet, I was open about what was going on social media. Just, my husband had a stroke. Everyone was always asking what's going on, and I was saying we're eating plant-based now, and this is what's going on. And then I ended up, because so many people were asking me questions, asking for help, asking for questions. So I was like, okay, I want to help them, but I want to actually be certified to help them and to have a deeper training. So after that, I became a nutritionist, went back to school, became a nutritionist, and got all the
Oh,
education so
good
that
for
I could
you.
truly help them. Yeah, no, it like sparked a really deep fire and passion inside of me that I saw the benefits in our life and in our family's life, and I wanted to shout it from the rooftops and just tell everyone, like, we just need to eat, like, not, you don't have to give up meat and cheese and dairy, but just eat it less. Like, let's just eat more plants, and instead
Yeah.
of focusing on, I want to lose weight, so let's eat more protein. I'm like, how about we just eat more of those of plant foods so that we can really truly heal our bodies and prevent the type of health event that we had. And so, especially as you see cancer rates like increasing like crazy, I feel like everyone and
Yeah.
their dog is getting cancer these days. But there's a
Mhm.
lot of things that we can do with diet and lifestyle, and eating more plant foods is center, right? It's key for all of it, right? And so yeah, so that I have courses and coaching programs and all the things, right? I started Instagram account called PlantWhys, because I like to teach the why behind eating plant-based. So I love to highlight
Oh.
like how amazing like cauliflower. Did you know that cauliflower is really good for your eyes? Like, who knew, right? We always think of
Mm.
carrots as good for your eyes, but cauliflower is really good for your eyes too, or just different things about different plants and why we would want to eat them more for that reason.
So if you're giving somebody some counsel, what are top like 5 things that you usually advise somebody who really wants to shift and bring in something more to their family and their diet? Maybe they are wanting to lose weight or just, I mean, society is telling us right now, especially with COVID, that you have to be in shape to help strengthen your immune system. So what are like 5 things that you give people like tips?
Right. Well, the number one thing is only 1 in 10 Americans eat the recommended 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Only one
Hmm,
in 10. So I say, let's start there, just with the basics that we all can agree on. No one disagrees with this one,
right.
get to the variety of 5 fruits and vegetables every day. So starting there. And again, it's always, what can you add? So after that, if you can even increase it from 5 to closer to 8 to 10, there was a meta-analysis study that showed that if we all ate about 8 to 10 fruits and vegetables every day, that the 8.9 million lives would be saved worldwide just by eating more fruits and vegetables. So the next goal would be, okay, well, now that we're at 5, let's increase that to 8 to 10. And think about beans. They kind of can be included in the fruits or vegetable category, and that makes it easy for people to get to. And then the next step would be that diversity, that plant diversity that we're talking about. So then I have people, get a piece of paper, like, and just put it on their fridge and say, okay, I had, brown rice. That was a whole plant food. So that's one. I get 1 point for the week. And you try to get to 30 so that you're not just eating the same foods over and over again, that you're getting that plant diversity. And again, not refined, but whole plant foods. So then
Yeah.
that's step number 3. And then after that is where we start talking about, okay, and it's almost like you don't have to talk about it, because once you're eating that type of diversity, you naturally have shifted away from, the typical standard American meals where everything's centered around the meat and the dairy products and the cheese. But overall, I would say the next step is to decrease cheese first, or even just dairy in general, just quick, like easy swaps, like just do a quick easy swap and try and use whole plant foods instead. So like a cashew sour cream instead of buying like the plant-based product of sour cream, if that makes sense. So using like the whole food where you can. And then after that is where we talk about, okay, now let's just try to eat meat sparingly. So just like on occasion, if you want, a lot of people really like in their families, they may have a hard time to, just taking it out completely. So I would say cook, a plant-based meal and then some chicken breast on the side for those who really want it. And it's a side, not the main meal. Right. So just kind of
Mhm.
shifting your focus over time, that you're adding that many more plants into your diet. going super slow so that you're not overwhelming your system. There's not going to be a lot of gas and bloating. I know if people are struggling with constipation, if they eat more plants, they'll have a lot of bloating because they're not flowing, like things aren't flowing through their system. So you want to just start really slow so that you can be flowing, getting those bowels on a regular basis going, and then you can add more plants without the side effects.
That's that's some good advice there at that flowing thing. Yeah, cleansing is a big deal. So you want to get your bowels moving in the right direction. But I like that. That a 30-point system, that's pretty simple. I know, I don't know. For me, I can probably eat the same thing every single day and probably not notice it, but because I'm just sort of that, I just do the same thing every day and I try not to think about it. But to have a worksheet that you can actually work through, I like that idea. What are some common misconceptions that you feel like people have trying to shift their diet away from maybe these processed or heavy foods that people sort of find as the staple of their diet?
Right. So the one of the first things is, I always waste my money on produce. People are like, I don't want to buy more because it's just going to be, I'm just almost like I buy the salad kit and I just throw it away a week later. Like it just, never
I
gets
know it's
eaten.
always a salad kit. They're like, that's my vegetable. Like, here's my like spinach salad, and that's it.
Right, right, right. The nice thing with spinach, at least you can freeze it and put it in smoothies. But
Yeah.
I always like to play a game, like right when some of my vegetables are going to go bad, and I think, okay, what can I make out of this? Like it's kind of fun to repurpose things. But in general, yes, you will waste all that produce if you still plant, like if you don't change anything else. Just adding more isn't, making that a goal. It might not help. You really do have to challenge yourself and eat more plant-based meals, like try new recipes, because then you're using the produce that you're buying, so maybe even just meal plan, throw in a couple of plant-based recipes, or even just start with plant-based breakfast and go from there so that you are planning on using those. Another major like question that people always have is what about my protein? Am I going to be protein deficient? Everyone's asking that. And the truth is that 97% of Americans are over consuming protein, yet only about 3 to 5% of Americans are eating enough fiber. So really, we should not be like hyper focusing on protein as much as eating more fiber, because when we consume fiber, we're consuming all of those plants that have all of these, vitamins and nutrients and phytochemicals that are going to help our body. And that's going to prevent disease. Whereas when we're focused on protein, protein has, again, the saturated fat, the cholesterol, and even the trans fat that's going to contribute to disease. So why are we focusing on something that may contribute to disease instead of focusing on something that's going to prevent disease? And so that's kind
Mhm.
of, where a lot of people are always asking questions. And truthfully, I mean, if you needed to, you could always add a little bit of protein powder if you're like really someone who works out. But most of us aren't bodybuilders, so we don't need to eat like bodybuilders.
That's an issue, is that that's where most people get their advice from. They see these people who are ripped or something, or they look at a YouTube video of a movie star who was in a Marvel movie and how he got into amazing shape. So that's what people think that's what they need to eat on a regular, everyday basis. But I like that. You're right that we're not bodybuilders unless we are.
Right.
Not saying
Let's
that you can't be a
start.
bodybuilder. But the average person isn't going to be eating like a bodybuilder. I was just listening to something. This athlete was saying that he had to gain 30 pounds for his competition, and he was consuming 5,000 calories a day. And he just after his competition, he was done. He said, "I'm not doing that for a long time." But people, when they hear that, oh, and they see this guy is in great shape, and they're thinking 5,000 calories a day sounds like a good deal. It those athletes are doing something different, and they have dietitians, and you know
Right.
their
Right.
system, but that's not an everyday, you know guy who's
Right.
in his mid 40s is going to be
Right.
doing something like that. um
Well, and truthfully, bodybuilders on average have a lifespan of just 47 years old. So we
yeah,
don't want to be like them. Like that's not great for long-term health.
Yeah, I was actually just listening. I mean, people who know who Ronnie Coleman is, he's like a Mr. He was a Mr. Universe. Uh and he was in amazing health, and now his body is just falling apart. Kidney function gets affected, all these things. I mean, it's not, I mean, they look great, but it's not good for long-term health, that's for sure.
Right.
So, um, so what are specific fruits and vegetables? You know, saying fruits and vegetables is like a great sort of like broad term, and you mentioned beans, but are there specific like fruits and vegetables that you feel like are lacking in our diet and you recommend, hey, you know, try this. This might help spice up what you're eating and give you good nutrients at the same time.
Right, right. So I love to highlight like the winners. And berries are one of the winners in the sense of they do so much for your health. So
Mhm.
I like to teach my kids like if you eat blueberries, it's going to help your memory. So if you're going to have a test in school today, let's eat those blueberries. It will help improve your mental function. And it's been proven like blueberries are really good for your memory, or anything in that like blue or dark purple color is awesome for that. And so
Mm,
try to have berries. I eat berries every morning with my oatmeal. Just,
mm.
every morning have those into your diet. And then the second thing is to always try to include leafy greens. And I know, everyone's like, but I don't want to eat like a rabbit. But if you can just, whether you whether you cook them or whatever you do, you can chop them up small. But the studies have found that if you were to consume a little bit over a serving of leafy greens every day, that overall in the long term, your brain would be 11 years younger than those who didn't. And so again, that's also so good for your brain, for your long-term memory, and for, just prevention of Alzheimer's disease. Berries and greens are really, really good for that. And so to include that into your diet. And I know I already mentioned beans, but I love them so much that I have to bring them up. There's two things about beans that I want to mention. Number one is they did a study where they compared two groups, right? And one group they told them to eat 500 calories less than what they normally ate. And then the second group, they told them to consume 5 cups of beans within a week, more like on top of what they're normally eating. So one group, they're eating a deficit of 500 calories a day. The other group, they're eating 5 cups of beans a week, like more than what they were eating before. Then after the end of the study, they measured the two. And the interesting thing is both groups lost the same amount of weight, one by
Whoa.
sacrificing, right? One by eating more. But the coolest part is that the bean eating group had better blood sugar regulation and better cholesterol levels. And so that fiber, again, that fiber is really going to help lower the cholesterol, will help with your blood sugar. So eating more instead of focusing on eating less can benefit your long-term health, not just your weight numbers, right? And then
Mm.
lastly, the other thing about beans is that studies have shown that if we all were to eat a cup of beans a day, which is kind of a lot, but if we all were to eat that much, it could add 4 years to our life. And so, 4 years for just adding more food into our diet. It's amazing. So yeah, beans, greens, berries, they all, are and whole grains. And I think whole grains is another thing that a lot of people just kind of avoid, right? But grains are so good that they again can reduce your risk of a heart attack by 25% if we all just changed from eating white bread to whole wheat bread. Like just reduce those refined grains, add in the whole grains. It does matter where possible to try and add in, or even if you hate the taste of brown rice, then add in quinoa to your white rice. Like what can you add in and still kind of maintain the flavor that you like? Think of about adding as much as possible in whole form.
I really like that philosophy. A lot of people do think, oh, you're going to take away my good things, but not taking away, but adding in some good things. And you can eat what you are eating right now, but add in a few good things. And eventually some of those bad things are going to be pushed aside because those good things are going to start really taking over. I saw an interesting quote on your Instagram and said, health is much more dependent on our habits and nutrition than on medicine. So yeah, I definitely I feel like nutrition is I feel like nutrition is a new medicine going forward. A lot of complicated things people are experiencing with their health, and nutrition is something where you basically put your health back into your own hands because that's something that you do on an everyday basis.
Right. Right. And our medical system is so focused on like, I mean, think of back in the day, like we give antibiotics back in the day, which is a miracle drug. Like it is true. You have something and then you take a pill and it goes away and it's better. But that's not the problem with chronic disease, right? Like if you
Mhm.
have high blood pressure, sure, you can take a pill, but why not to treat the symptoms? But why don't we really like talk about the underlying cause? And the more potassium rich foods you eat, the more it naturally is going to pull salt out of your bloodstream and into your urine, and it will lower that blood pressure. And so, like, why are we not talking about the foods in particular? I wish when my husband had a stroke that we sat down and while we were given this piece of paper, it's like, let's explain what this means.
I know
you
this
know,
is I have to apologize because I am a medical doctor and this is our training. Our training is designed to we can save lives and treat illness, but we don't actually help people maintain health. That is just it's a thing that doctors actually don't get a lot of training on.
Right. Right. They
Yeah.
don't. They don't. And it's complicated. There's politics involved in all of it as well. Like there's a lot going on. And that's why they couldn't say to reduce your intake of meat and dairy because of like all of the political structures around it, right? So they have to use
Yeah.
terms like saturated fat and cholesterol and that the regular human doesn't understand. So there's a lot of it, but I think if you do sit and just even Google, like just Google, okay, if you find someone saying something on Instagram, like today, someone's like, you should avoid eating nut butters because they will oxidize in your body. And I'm like, what? And I Google, like polyunsaturated fat. If you were to replace saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat, it lowers your cholesterol. I'm like, we just have to do our own research, just spend a second in PubMed or just Google like studies and find a couple of studies to back up everything. And then you see a pattern overall. And that's where it drew me towards a plant-based diet, because of just the research that backs it up. And the research, not just one study or two studies or studies that are only 6 weeks long. It's the studies that are like 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, these really long-term studies and more than anything, the people who live the oldest in the world, like all the blue zones, the areas, pockets of cities where people have the most centenarians, where there's the most centenarians. One's in Okinawa, Japan, for example, another is in Costa Rica, another one's in, Loma Linda, California. And they all follow a similar diet, even though totally different, but they use beans as their source of protein. They eat a lot of plants. And, in Okinawa, Japan, they eat mostly sweet potatoes. Like it's a high carb diet, right?
Hmm.
But they have the most centenarians, that people are living to be 100 years old and older because they're eating mostly plants and just a little bit of animal products. And so,
Hmm.
and obviously not processed foods as well. So
I'm
there's these
glad that you
patterns
did
that we,
mention the carbohydrate thing because I feel like that carbohydrates have sort of gotten a bad rap, but what we're talking about is like processed and refined sugars, and that's different than like broccoli is considered a carbohydrate, but I don't think it's the same
right,
as processed sugar.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, where can people follow you online?
Right. So I am online at www.plantwhys.com. Again, it's WHYS because I like to teach the why behind eating more plants. And on Instagram and TikTok and all the channels also, but mostly on Instagram at PlantWhys.
All right, Sunrider on so Instagram and your website. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I want to thank you for spending your time with us and sharing with us your experience. I also want to make a quick shout out again to Sunrider, which is we're also very passionate about health and wellness and finding sources of products that are natural, also plant based, and variety that are packaged that can help you have a healthy and happy lifestyle. So this stuff is, and you can tell how passionate she is. And that's probably what people really are attracted to what you're having to say is your passion for it. You literally went to become a nutritionist because you're passionate about it. And that's pretty awesome. So, all right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Thanks. This is Dr. Ruben Chen, and I'll see you next time.